please, please, please still apply to HLS even if you don't get a 170 on your LSAT. Harvard's admission process is truly a holistic one. Admissions considers more than just your LSAT score. They look at your undergraduate GPA, leadership and/or professional experience, letters of recommendation, and more. I, for one, did not receive a 170 on my LSAT, and here I am at HLS. However, if you are concerned about your LSAT score, GPA, or some other component of your application, I'd recommend applying as early as you can. HLS admits students on a rolling basis, and more students often submit their applications later on in the cycle. While I am not an admissions counselor by any means, I still think that you might have better odds if you apply earlier when there's less people being considered. Because I was concerned about my LSAT score, I submitted my application in early November and then received my admissions in December. I was also worried about the optics of taking the LSAT multiple times. I ended up taking it twice, but I know people that have taken it 3 times and were still admitted to HLS. If you're considering taking the LSAT for a 3rd, 4th, or 5th time, ask yourself if the additional time and energy is worth any potential bump in score. Oftentimes, your increase from test to test will be marginal, and if you're balancing studying while working a full-time job or taking a full course load in school, a couple extra points might not be worth the stress to your mental health. This is especially true because you don't need a 180 to go to Harvard Law School. I scored less than 170 on both of my LSATs and was considering taking it again. However, I ultimately decided not to take it again and instead refocus that time and energy on performing well at my job post-law school and then working on parts of my application, like the personal statement. I took the LSAT twice. I started studying 3 months before my first exam. I took an in-person course with test masters that lasted about 2 months and then spent the remainder of that time self-studying. I am terrible at standardized tests and was studying while working a summer internship. Therefore, the structure of the in-person class helped keep me on a study schedule and provided a helpful workbook and other resources that guided my learning. Then, I took my second LSAT about 5 months after my first. I mostly self-studied for the second one, but I also paid for about 5 hours of individual tutoring with a test master's instructor. If you decide to go with a test prep company, try to use only their study tools and no others. This is because different companies have different approaches to teaching concepts, like logic games, for example. Thus, you don't want to confuse yourself if you learned how to do a certain logic game one way, but then are reviewing a test answer that explains it a different way. Also, with choosing test prep companies, consider looking at resources from your undergraduate college or in your community. Some schools or student organizations might actually have discounts that you might be able to apply to paying for your test preparatory materials. If I could go back, I would definitely have started studying earlier for my first exam. Looking back, I felt way more prepared for my second exam than I did my first. And I think that's because I had the time to take and review more practice tests. So if you're like me and dislike standardized tests, I'd recommend starting at least 4 months before your exam.
The LSAT, so my diagnosis was a 139. So me and the LSAT got some bad blood. We was funky for a minute. My biggest advice is that helped me the most. I got into a really cool program called Trials. But even Trials helped a lot with the actual learning how to do the LSAT. But more than anything else, what it taught me was that at some point you're gonna hit a ceiling, your first ceiling, right? Whether that's in the 150s, the 140s, the 160s, whatever it may be. I started at a 139. My first floor was around a 157. I could not get past it for 2 months. But I just knew that at some point if I really just buckled down and took it hella serious, I'd get past it eventually. I eventually did and scored a lot higher. That first floor you're gonna hit, you can get past it, but you gotta just keep going. And closer to your test day, just take hella practice tests. The one thing about the LSAT that is fair, your practice tests are kind of accurate to your real tests. The whole test is fake and janky, but that's the only good part. If you're scoring around a 160, 162, you're not going to take the LSAT day and get a 150. You're not going to get a 170. You're going to get somewhere in that range. And that don't rush yourself.
This is a question that I would say is related to the 170 question. If I don't crack the 170, if I don't get close to the 180, do I take the test more than once? Is Harvard going to look down on me if I take it more than one time? I would say no. And if they did look badly on it, then I don't know why I'm here. But I will say that I took the LSAT twice. The first time that I took the LSAT was not under the best circumstances. I don't even want to tell you the story, but one day you can look me up and you can ask. It was horrific. And so I got my score back, and I just knew I wasn't going to be applying to the schools that I ultimately wanted to go to with that score. So I took a step back, took a deep breath, because y'all know this is a lot of pressure, especially for our first generation law students like myself, where you're just like, it feels like the weight of the family is on you. Let that roll off. Let that roll off for a minute. And I will say you can take it more than once. I was given the advice, don't take it more than 3 times, but you can certainly take it more than once. Certain schools will take the average of the scores, and so you just have to be careful. I think the best piece of advice that I got is that you want to break out of the LSAT range. So I'm gonna use my hands for this. If you can't tell, I've already been using my hands a lot. You have kind of a buffer that's given on your score. So let's say that you have a 160. They will give you a +4 and a -4. So they'll say that you're in the 164 range or you're in the 156 range. Hope that math checks out. And so what the person told me is that you want to break out of that. So if you can increase your score by 5 points or 6 points, or just at least break out of whatever that range is, you're demonstrating improvement. And that's exactly what I did between my first and second. So by the time I took my second, I felt really good. And the other thing that you can do is that you can provide an addendum. An addendum is a part of the application where you're able to explain something about your LSAT score or your grades or life experience. And I know certain people feel hesitant about addendums. Do I submit one? Do I not? I felt really confident based on my circumstances submitting one for my LSAT. I had a number of different family emergencies that happened that did directly impact my ability to study, and was able to explain myself in a way that I was still confident. I said, even in the midst of all the things going on, I still broke out of that, plus or minus 4 range, and demonstrated that I can thrive even under the worst of circumstances. So, choose your own adventure. I would say, please, please, please do not shy away from taking it more than once. This is not a one shot and you're done. You can absolutely take it more than one time.